Some people sabotage themselves without even realizing it. Their actions scream ignorance, yet they believe they're wise. They move through life making the same mistakes, yet instead of pausing to reflect, they double down, convinced they already know all they need to know. This isn't just ignorance, it's a dangerous form of self-deception. The Stoics warned against such blindness, teaching that true wisdom begins with acknowledging our own limitations. In a world full of distractions, emotions run high, and people act on impulse rather than reason. Many believe they are in control, but in reality, they are controlled by their emotions, their biases, and their unwillingness to change. They react rather than respond. They assume rather than understand. They speak without listening. They act without thinking. These behaviors, though common, are not signs of intelligence but of ignorance. And the worst part, those who fall into these patterns often don't even realize it. Stoic philosophy offers a powerful lens through which to examine these self-destructive tendencies. The ancient Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, believed that intelligence is not about how much knowledge you accumulate, but about how you apply reason, discipline, and self-awareness to your life. They emphasized that the truly wise are those who understand their own ignorance and actively seek to grow. They understood that the moment you believe you have nothing left to learn is the moment you stop growing altogether. But stupidity is not simply a lack of knowledge. It is a way of thinking, a refusal to learn, a resistance to self-reflection, and an inability to accept responsibility for one's own actions. A foolish person does not examine their failures. They blame others, make excuses, and insist that the problem is never within them but always outside of them. They repeat the same mistakes, expecting different results. They are slaves to their emotions, easily provoked, easily misled, and often unaware of their own limitations. These behaviors are not harmless. They have real consequences. They lead to poor decision-making, broken relationships, lost opportunities, and, ultimately, a life filled with unnecessary suffering. The Stoics believed that suffering is often self-inflicted, a result of our own unchecked impulses and irrational thinking. When a person refuses to take control of their mind, they allow the world to control them instead. They become reactive, easily manipulated, and incapable of true growth. Wisdom, on the other hand, requires effort. It requires discipline. It requires the ability to pause, reflect, and admit when you are wrong. A wise person is not afraid to question their own beliefs, seek guidance, and learn from failure. They recognize that intelligence is not about appearing smart, but about continuously striving to be better. They do not let emotions cloud their judgment, nor do they assume they know everything. Instead, they remain open, adaptable, and willing to grow. In this video, we will break down 4 signs of a stupid person, inspired by the principles of Stoic philosophy. These behaviors are warning signs, indicators of a mind that resists growth and is trapped in self-inflicted ignorance. By recognizing these signs, you can protect yourself from falling into these destructive patterns and, more importantly, cultivate the wisdom necessary to navigate life with clarity and strength. But before we begin, take a moment to support Beyond Vision Mindset. If you value content that challenges you to think, reflect, and grow, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement not only helps the channel grow, but also spreads powerful insights that can change lives. Now, let's dive in. 1. Reacting emotionally instead of responding rationally. One of the clearest signs of a foolish person is their inability to control their emotions. They react impulsively to every situation, allowing anger, frustration, or excitement to dictate their actions. Instead of thinking before they speak or act, they lash out, make rash decisions, and later find themselves trapped in the consequences of their own emotional outbursts. Stoic philosophy teaches that emotional control is the foundation of wisdom. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, emphasized the importance of ruling over one's emotions rather than being ruled by them. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This means that no matter what happens around us, we always have control over how we respond. But foolish people fail to see this. They believe that external events cause their emotions, when in reality, it is their own lack of self-discipline that allows emotions to take over. Consider a person who loses their temper at the slightest inconvenience, whether it's a delayed coffee order, a minor disagreement, or unexpected criticism. Instead of calmly assessing the situation, they explode with anger, damaging relationships and losing the respect of those around them. They may justify their behavior by saying, "That's just how I am," or "I can't help it." But the truth is, they have never trained themselves to pause and think before reacting. Their emotions control them, not the other way around. Another sign of emotional immaturity is taking everything personally. A foolish person assumes that every criticism, every disagreement, and every challenge to their views is a direct attack. They become defensive, refusing to consider alternative perspectives. This makes them difficult to reason with, as they see every conversation as a battle rather than an opportunity to grow. Instead of seeking truth, they seek to win arguments, even at the cost of logic, relationships, and their own peace of mind. A wise person, on the other hand, understands that emotions are natural but should never be allowed to dictate behavior. They practice emotional detachment, not in the sense of suppressing emotions, but in choosing how to respond to them. They recognize that anger does not solve problems, that fear should not dictate decisions, and that a calm mind is a powerful mind. To overcome emotional impulsiveness, one must develop self-awareness. When you feel anger, frustration, or anxiety rising, pause. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself, is my reaction based on reason, or am I simply letting emotions control me? The Stoics taught that between stimulus and response, there is always a moment of choice. That moment determines whether you act with wisdom or with foolishness. In the end, a foolish person is a slave to their emotions, while a wise person is their master. If you want to avoid self-destruction, start by learning to control your emotions rather than allowing them to control you. 2. Refusing to learn from mistakes. A foolish person repeats the same mistakes over and over again, yet somehow believes that the outcome will be different. Instead of reflecting on past failures, they either ignore them, blame others, or make excuses. They convince themselves that bad luck, unfair circumstances, or other people are responsible for their setbacks, never realizing that their unwillingness to adapt is the real problem. The Stoics believed that failure is one of the greatest teachers, if you are willing to learn from it. Epictetus once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." In other words, those who believe they have nothing to learn will remain trapped in ignorance. Foolish people do exactly this. They refuse to acknowledge their own shortcomings, assuming that their way is always the right way. Instead of adjusting their approach, they continue making poor decisions and suffer the same consequences, time and time again. Consider someone who keeps making bad financial decisions, spending recklessly, failing to save, or making risky investments without proper research. When they face financial hardship, rather than learning from their mistakes, they blame the economy, their job, or even their family. They never pause to ask themselves, what could I have done differently? Because they never take responsibility, they never improve. This pattern is not limited to finances. It applies to relationships, careers, health, and even personal growth. Someone who repeatedly falls into toxic relationships but refuses to examine their own choices will continue attracting the same problems. Someone who consistently fails at a job but never works to improve their skills will never advance. The inability to self-reflect and adjust is what keeps foolish people stuck in a cycle of failure. On the other hand, wise individuals embrace failure as an opportunity to grow. Instead of avoiding discomfort, they analyze their mistakes and extract valuable lessons. They ask themselves, what led to this outcome? What could I have done differently? How can I prevent this from happening again? By adopting this mindset, they turn setbacks into stepping stones, making each failure a foundation for future success. The key to breaking the cycle of foolishness is self-honesty. It takes courage to admit that you were wrong. It takes wisdom to change your approach. The Stoics remind us that the greatest enemy of growth is pride, the belief that we already have all the answers. A truly intelligent person understands that learning never stops. They see every experience, good or bad, as a lesson. If you find yourself making the same mistakes in life, stop and reflect. Are you learning from your experiences, or are you simply repeating them? If you refuse to change, life will continue teaching you the same painful lessons until you finally listen. 3. Arguing without seeking truth. A foolish person argues not to understand but to win. They engage in debates not because they are searching for wisdom but because they want to prove themselves right, no matter how flawed their reasoning may be. They see discussions as battles to be won rather than opportunities to learn. Instead of listening, they wait for their turn to speak. Instead of considering different perspectives, they double down on their own beliefs, even when faced with clear evidence to the contrary. Stoic philosophy teaches that a wise person values truth over ego. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. For my goal is the truth, and the truth has never harmed anyone." This is the mindset of a truly intelligent person, someone who is willing to abandon false beliefs when presented with better reasoning. But a foolish person refuses to do this. They see admitting they were wrong as a weakness, so they will defend even the most illogical positions just to avoid feeling like they've lost. One clear sign of this behavior is when someone constantly interrupts or raises their voice in an argument. They mistake loudness for strength, thinking that if they dominate the conversation, they've somehow won. But all they've done is expose their insecurity. A strong mind does not need to shout or belittle others. It remains calm and focused on the facts. Another common trait of foolish debaters is the inability to separate emotions from discussions. If someone disagrees with them, they take it personally. Instead of engaging in a rational conversation, they resort to insults, sarcasm, or emotional outbursts. They don't want to exchange ideas, they want to defeat the other person, as if proving them wrong somehow makes them superior. The irony is that this mindset prevents real learning. When your goal is only to win an argument, you close yourself off from new knowledge. You become blind to your own limitations and prevent yourself from growing. Meanwhile, a wise person sees every discussion as an opportunity to refine their understanding. They are not afraid to say, "I don't know enough about this, tell me more." They do not see changing their mind as a loss, but as a step closer to truth. So how do you avoid falling into the trap of foolish arguments? By prioritizing truth over ego. Before engaging in a debate, ask yourself, am I truly listening, or am I just waiting to respond? Am I open to changing my mind if presented with better reasoning? Is this conversation about seeking truth, or just about proving myself right? A strong mind does not fear new perspectives, it welcomes them. True intelligence is not about proving others wrong but about discovering what is right. Those who argue with wisdom gain knowledge. Those who argue with arrogance remain trapped in ignorance. 4. Repeating mistakes without learning. A foolish person does not learn from their mistakes. They stumble over the same problems repeatedly, yet never take the time to reflect on why. Instead of analyzing their failures and making adjustments, they blame others, external circumstances, or simply ignore the consequences of their actions. In contrast, a wise person understands that every mistake is an opportunity to grow. They do not fear failure, they embrace it as a teacher. The Stoics believed that self-awareness is the key to wisdom. Seneca once said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Mistakes and hardships are inevitable in life, but what separates the wise from the foolish is how they respond. A fool refuses to acknowledge their role in their own problems. If they make poor financial choices and end up in debt, they blame the economy. If they repeatedly fail in relationships, they blame their partners. If they struggle in their career, they claim bad luck is always against them. The pattern is clear. They refuse to take responsibility. One of the most damaging aspects of this mindset is that it keeps a person stuck in a cycle of failure. Without reflection, without a willingness to analyze what went wrong, they are doomed to repeat the same errors. Imagine someone touching a hot stove and getting burned, yet doing it again and again, expecting a different outcome. That is the foolish approach to life. The wise, on the other hand, recognize pain as feedback. They examine what led to their mistakes, adjust their actions, and move forward with a better strategy. A lack of self-reflection also leads to arrogance. A foolish person believes they already know everything, so they see no need for growth. They dismiss constructive criticism as an attack, refusing to consider that others might have valuable insights. They mistake stubbornness for strength, thinking that holding on to bad habits or outdated beliefs somehow makes them resilient. In reality, it only makes them stagnant. So how do you avoid this trap? By embracing failure as a lesson, not as a defeat. After every setback, ask yourself, what could I have done differently? What lesson is hidden in this failure? How can I apply this knowledge to improve in the future? A strong mind does not run from mistakes, it studies them. The most successful people in history, from philosophers to entrepreneurs, all have one thing in common. They learn from their failures. They don't repeat the same actions and expect different results. They adapt. They evolve. Foolishness is not about making mistakes, it's about refusing to learn from them. If you want to break free from stagnation, adopt the mindset of a lifelong student. Question yourself. Reflect on your choices. And most importantly, commit to improvement. True wisdom is not about being perfect, It's about being better than you were yesterday. Conclusion. The difference between wisdom and foolishness is not intelligence, it's awareness. A foolish person sabotages themselves not because they lack potential, but because they refuse to see their own flaws. They react with emotions instead of reason, argue to win instead of to learn, surround themselves with empty distractions, and repeat the same mistakes without growth. Meanwhile, the wise understand that self-mastery is the foundation of success. They reflect, they adapt, and they prioritize truth over ego. Stoic philosophy teaches that true strength comes from within. The world is full of distractions, temptations, and empty noise that can pull you away from your purpose. But you always have the choice to rise above, to be better, to discipline your mind, and to take control of your actions. The path to wisdom is not about being perfect. It's about being willing to improve, even when it's uncomfortable. So ask yourself, are you living with awareness, or are you falling into the traps of foolishness? Are you controlling your emotions, or are they controlling you? Are you open to learning, or are you clinging to false beliefs? Every day is a new opportunity to grow. Choose the path of wisdom. If this video gave you something to think about, make sure to like and share it so more people can benefit from these insights. And if you want to continue your journey toward a stronger, wiser mind, subscribe to Beyond Vision Mindset for more content like this. Keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you in the next one.